Okay. Hey there, I'm Sophia Mitropoulos. This is my channel, and this is my submission for 20 things I learned in 2020. I've seen a lot of my favorite creators make videos like this, and I thought it would be nice for me to make my own interpretation of the 20 things I learned in 2020. This also is my last video of 2020, which is very exciting. I started this channel in 2020, I got it monetized in 2020. You can watch all sorts of stuff about that up there. And so these are the 20 lessons that I learned. Let's pull up my Notion. Yes, I'm addicted to Notion. It's everybody's fault. Some of these, before I dive in, I'm gonna clarify, some of these are a little cliche, but I don't know if I really care, so I'm just gonna go into it. Number one, to be taken seriously, take it seriously. And that's something I talked a little bit about in my Don't Be Afraid to Be Seen Trying video, but I think it still holds true, and I think that's probably my biggest lesson of this year, was that if you want something to grow and develop, the first step for other people to take it seriously is for you to take it seriously for yourself. And I think when other people see you taking something seriously, they also will take it seriously in turn, if that makes sense. Number two, I had to put in as Don't Be Afraid to Be Seen Trying, because I made an entire video talking about my opinion on that quote and how I feel like it's impacted me. And basically, don't be afraid to be a beginner, and don't be afraid to look like a beginner. I think that's been a really big thing for me in 2020 also, just because I started this channel, and having this channel and putting videos out regularly, it is putting yourself out there in a way that I haven't done before. And so I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I'm doing it. The third one is test and change, which also is like pivot. If something's not working, pivot. I think in April, I tried to start a company called Artists of Queens. I found that it wasn't quite doing what I wanted, and instead I pivoted to this YouTube channel. And I promise this entire video is not me just hyping up this YouTube channel, but the creation of this channel and the development of this channel was a big part of my 2020. I think a lot of the lessons that I learned this year were from this channel. And so the next one is rest, but be consistent. I think the consistency applies to consistent rest, but it also applies to get your work done regularly and consistently, and that will pay off in the long run. And that also is something that I learned from this channel. Number five is something that I actually learned in 2019 when I was competing as a weightlifter. I had this mentality where it was like, if I show up half-assed, it's better than not showing up at all. And that was specifically in the context of me doing my ab work, just because abs just felt like a task that I didn't want to add on to my daily training exercises. But if I felt like I could show up half-assed, I would do it, as opposed to if I felt like I had to show up 100%, I just wouldn't do it. I would just fully skip it. And then once you show up half-assed, you end up full-assing it. And so I think this applies in the realm of art to my sketchbook, which is just show up in your sketchbook, and you can make some really mediocre drawings, and that can still count towards your creation. That leads me to the next one, which is question the things that take up the most of your time. And I think this is something that a lot of people really faced in 2020, just because we all were suddenly presented with so much of our time, and the things that we usually spend our time on, like for me it was weightlifting, for other people, you know, socializing or whatever your experience is. I think we all have been sort of faced with this need to really assess the things that we were spending our time on and what we're going to continue to bring into life post-pandemic and post-lockdown and social changes, you know? This one is a major shout out to my family. This is a quote that my family has always kind of said, which is, just when you think you can't take it anymore, it changes. And that's a really helpful one, because I think my perception of what I thought I couldn't take has shifted. I think the goalpost of like, I can't take this, has been moved multiple times. So it's like, I think I'm at my max, and then it turns out I actually can take a little bit more. And then when you really can't take it anymore, it does change. Like, it's great. So it's like kind of like the only way out is through. I feel like this is a whole video of me just saying cheesy lines. 20 cheesy lines. That's what I'm gonna retitle it. 20 cheesy lines that got me through 2020. Forewarned is forearmed. Another family quote. And it's just knowing what you're getting into before you go into things is very, very helpful. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Number 9 is don't be a NIMBY, which is not in my backyard. Like, don't be the kind of person that doesn't clean up after yourself, or, you know, whatever it is. Take responsibility for your actions and clean up after yourself. Not necessarily like literally clean up after yourself, but that too. I mean, literally also, but kind of metaphorically. Keep yourself in check and try to hold yourself accountable for the things that you do and are about. The other thing, number 10, is thank yourself regularly, and kind of the act of practicing gratitude. I made a video a while ago where I talked about how in yoga, at the end of a yoga class, a lot of times the teacher will say, thank yourself for showing up on your mat today. And I think that practice is really, really beneficial. And it's something that I've been trying to apply to my own self in terms of my artistic practice, which is like, thank yourself for showing up in your sketchbook today, and thank yourself for just making stuff. Another thing I learned, I don't know if this is a lesson, I guess it is a lesson, which is sometimes aesthetics get in my way. And I learned this about books specifically this year. I started reading ebooks this year, and I suddenly was able to blast through them at like 3 times speed. Whereas used to be when I was reading physical books, I would get really attached to the visuals of the physical books, like how the cover looks, how it feels in my hand, and I would just want to carry it around for extended periods of time, and I wouldn't actually finish the book. So trying to just pay attention to when aesthetics are getting in my way. Number 12 is just sort of thinking about being 1 chapter ahead and teaching from the perspective that you are only 1 chapter ahead. I think a lot of times, especially in context of this channel, I was like, well, who am I to be teaching? Or who am I to be saying these things or having these, I don't want to say who am I to have these opinions, right? Everybody is entitled to their opinions, and you're allowed to share them on the internet, and you should. But I think thinking about my audience as perhaps just people that are only 1 chapter behind me in terms of steps, I guess. And that if you could just show yourself 2 years ago, or show yourself a few steps back, what was to come and how you could do those next steps, that's the kind of sweet spot that I'm aiming for. And another kind of perspective shift that I've tried to implement is going from how do I get to how do I give. So not how do I get 1,000 subscribers, but how do I give value to the people watching my videos? Yeah, how do I get to how do I give? I think that's a really big one, and I really like that one a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's definitely helped. Number 14 is learning to forgive yourself for the embarrassing stuff that you've done. I feel like this year I have spent so much of the year just laying in bed before I go to sleep thinking about the list of all the things that I've done that are embarrassing, and I tried to figure out how to get over that, how to stop being embarrassed by those things. And the way that I found to do that is to basically say, that was an embarrassing thing and you did that wrong, or you messed up in that capacity, and I forgive you. You learned your lesson from that and you're forgiven. And then anytime that thought bubbles back up, I just think, well, we've already talked about it. Me and my internal dialogue, I guess. We've already thought it through and we've already forgiven ourselves. So don't worry, you've learned your lesson, you've taken the impact that you can, and that's okay, move on. You're forgiven. Again, remember you're forgiven. And I think the act of doing the forgiving and then the act of remembering that you've forgiven yourself has been really helpful for me to get past those kind of cringe moments that tend to bubble up when you're laying in bed trying to go to sleep. Number 15 is sort of similar. Trying to release resentments and release things that make me angry or upset, especially when they're directed at people, because I think a lot of times that is just me carrying around emotional baggage, I guess. And by releasing it, they no longer hold the power over me. And then I also try to send healing to whoever I feel wronged me, even if it's not necessarily their fault. Just trying to approach my intersocial relationships that have maybe had turbulence with kindness and compassion and tenderness, and allowing that to bleed over into my own life and how I carry around maybe the ends of friendships or relationships or business partnerships or whatever it is that didn't necessarily end the way I wanted them to. 16 is, as someone who loves to talk, that's me, I love to talk, learning when to be quiet. And I think a lot of my year has been social learning, I think, in a weird way. But learning that not everything needs a response, and sometimes not responding is enough. You just learning to listen. I don't know. That one, it's hard to explain. Number 17 is trying to reframe the way that I interact with people. I think a lot of times I tend to talk about myself, and I tend to try to relate to people by talking about my own experiences, and that's a habit that I've really been trying to break recently. And part of it is just doing a little bit more interviewing of people and seeing how people have gone through their own experiences. I realized at some point that I listen to a ton of interview podcasts, and I don't know who half of these interviewees are. And why not ask these same kinds of questions to the people in my personal life? Not in a way that I'm interviewing them officially, but just trying to bring more of that curiosity into my conversations with people that I work with or people that I live with or whatever the situation is, the people that I get to meet in my daily life. Trying to learn from those people and learn about their experiences and hear their stories. I think Humans of New York is a great example that everybody has an interesting story to tell, and it's just about getting that out of them, and it's a curiosity, and it's cultivating that curiosity with your social relationships. Number 18, I learned from an interview that Tim Ferriss did with Neil Gaiman? No. Did with this person, where he talked about when you like are kind of sitting and you have all these thoughts bubbling up, going around the table, like visualizing a conference table and going around the table. So the conference table is full of all these thoughts where it's like, I have to do the dishes is one thought, and then I'm stressed about tomorrow is another thought. And so you say, okay, like who's first? So I have to do the dishes. And then they're like, yes, I'm here. You have to do the dishes. And it's like, okay, we'll do the dishes. Are you good? And then the guy that's like, I have to do the dishes is like, yes, I'm good, thank you. And then they sit down. And then it's like, okay, who's next? I'm stressed about tomorrow. It's like, okay, you're stressed about tomorrow? What are you stressed about? It's like, I'm stressed that I'm not gonna make it on time, I'm not gonna do this, da da da. And it's like, okay, well, this is how we're gonna solve that, this is how we're gonna solve that, and this is how we're gonna solve that. Is that good? And then if the little person at the table is like, no, that's not good, I have a couple more things. It's like, okay, well, let's work through a couple more things. And then you work through those ideas and you kind of work your way around the conference table in your head. And at the end of it, you're like, is everybody covered? And everybody, all the thoughts have quieted. And they're like, yes, I'm good, you covered it. And then you get that moment of stillness. And that's been really exciting for me, like having that moment of stillness and that like meeting at the conference table with my thoughts. It's helped me a lot. Number 19 is a big one. You don't have to post on social media. I quit Instagram this year and I feel fantastic. I feel like I am off the digital grid. I've made a whole video about it. It's up there. It was pre the social dilemma and I just felt really overwhelmed by all of the pressure of social media, and I saw a lot of comments of things that were like, we see you if you're not posting, and that was pretty much the entire reason I stopped posting altogether. I left Instagram as a platform because of that culture, and now that I'm 6 months out of Instagram, I miss having a place to share photos. I will admit, I do miss having a place to share photos. But beyond that, I feel fantastic. Like, I feel so good that I don't have to keep putting on the internet where I am and what I'm doing. There's no like day-to-day, hour-to-hour necessity for me to be active online. I have 2 videos that go up on YouTube on Wednesdays and Fridays, and beyond that, I am pretty much off the internet. I mean, I'm not off the internet. I'm very much on the internet. I'm just off posting things and like having people be able to keep tabs on me and what I'm doing and what, I don't know. It's very freeing. And then my last lesson for 2020 that I've learned is just to figure out how to show up for myself. Something that I've really been trying to do this year is, or at least recently in this year, is trying to date myself. Like trying to become infatuated with myself. I think I am a chronic crusher. I develop very strong crushes. I'm trying to teach myself how to do it just for myself and just show up for me and cultivate my relationship with myself and show tenderness and affection to myself. None of these 20 things are particularly mind-blowing or particularly powerful by themselves. Actually, I think I take that back. I think they're all kind of powerful by themselves. And I feel like in mass, they kind of sound a little cheesy and a little cliche, but they are the kind of things that have floated to the top for me throughout this year. And 2020 sucked, but I also didn't hate it. I mean, it sucked for very real reasons. There was a lot of loss and destruction and horrible things that happened this year, and I don't want to discount that, but I also think there was a lot of growth. This is not like hugely profound, but I think it is important to leave the year thinking about the positives and thinking about all the things that these difficult times have taught us. And this was a really kind of difficult exercise for me to do, to think of all these things that I learned in 2020. 20 is a lot. That's a long list of things, but them's the lessons. Is that how that works? I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I can't wait to put out new content in 2021. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. And if you are feeling generous, please join my Patreon. I put out an extra video a month on Patreon, and I am accessible to you. I can answer all your questions and your messages and stuff, and I'll just like post whatever you want on Patreon. If you join and you let me know what it is that you want, I'll do it. I'm a patron for hire. No, thank you so much for watching. I had a blast starting this channel in 2020 and turning it into a monetized channel, which was amazing. I can't believe I did it. I thought I wasn't gonna do it until January, and I did it by Thanksgiving. So that was a really big accomplishment for me, and I'm really proud of myself, and I'm not embarrassed to say that publicly on the internet. So thanks for stopping by. Subscribe if you wanna see more and all that good stuff. You know how it goes. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!